Are just joining us, the first half of this hour-long rant was on Coach Alan Miller. What's your account? Alan Kress IFBB Pro, right?
Yeah.
Right? So after you're done watching this, you can see all the stuff that you missed on the live over there earlier, or you can wait to watch it all on YouTube. Or if you want your sanity, just stop watching right now. Okay, so for those of you guys that were not on the other side, just to recap, we are talking contest prep topics. We have already discussed how many calories is too much, how much cardio is too much. Calories, there is no too much. Eat them all.
Eat them all. Especially 2 week out bikini competitors.
Yeah, eat them all.
Eat them all.
Okay. Yeah, at 2 weeks out, all calories go to your glutes.
Good.
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah. The good little AMPK protocol sure does. All right. We talked a little bit about adaptive metabolism and plateaus in contest prep. A little bit of the cause and mechanisms of that, solutions to that. We talked about training to failure, and then that's where things just kind of went to hell, and we went all over the place. Adam got on the soapbox a couple times, and now we are talking about poop, right? We are talking about bowel movements, regularity, and whatnot. So we ended the last one with the discussion of fiber, right? So, Yep. So if you want to know about fiber, go watch the other video. So we're talking about constipation. So the other thing with constipation, so fiber could be an option in the appropriate situation, or you could be looking at needing to add in micronutrients, need to improve hydration, or actually needing to just increase calories, right? So there's a lot of reason that your body will become in a state where it's going to try and reabsorb nutrients, right? And that's usually when micronutrient qualities are low. And one of the biggest micronutrients that we absorb in the lower GI tract is minerals. And so I think with not only lower calories, when you overtrain, you tend to just get less digestion overall. One of the most metabolically, expensive things that we make in terms of human physiology is HCl, our stomach acid, followed quickly by bile, which is what we release to be able to emulsify fats and help us remove toxins and actually make a lot of nutrients absorbable and get to the right point in the digestive tract, et cetera, which pretty much means that at that point in time we're running off carbohydrates, right? So all of those micronutrients, not only do we break them down less, so all of that like broccoli that you are like microwaving and just pissing off everybody with, you're not actually getting all the micronutrients out of that if your digestive system is slow and sluggish because you're overstressed. To compensate for that, your colon is going to tighten up like this and try and squeeze everything out of it can. So adding sources of micronutrients, everything from a multivitamin to maybe a powdered green shake can be valuable. Just like anything that can provide an easier source of digestion also. So maybe digestive enzymes, maybe easier to digest foods, right? So I would say like in contest prep, when you get to that point of stress, maybe actually one of the times, like especially as you're getting close to the show, where whole foods can actually work against you, right? Because at that point in time, your calories and stuff are too low for you to worry about, trying to keep calorie density down or whatever, right? I mean, if you want to eat, a fistful of cauliflower because it, helps with your hunger, a few weeks out from the show, by all means, you can do that. But don't expect that you're going to get a lot of micronutrients. You need to have enough stuff that's easy to digest to get adequate enough nutrition that you're going to maintain your intestinal motility. If you've already screwed it up, you can look at some of the things that are going to be the most correlated with getting that moving. One of them is going to be magnesium. And in reality, a lot of people will use a poorly absorbing magnesium, like a magnesium citrate, right? So I see a lot of competitors, they use that Calm product, right? Yes. And it works really well at the end because it's actually a crappy product and doesn't absorb very well, and therefore it stimulates you to, go to the bathroom, right? I don't like laxatives, right? Because what do laxatives also promote the release of? Water, right? So laxatives push push fluid into the GI tract, right? And so there's one more thing you're going to be depleted on, right? You're going to be even more dehydrated. So on top of being depleted of all your micronutrients, you're going to be depleted of probably, you could argue one of the most important, micronutrients, water, right? So when you're dehydrated, it makes it harder to get anything into your cells. So you're just kind of like compounding the thing if you actually use a laxative, right? So, I mean, in terms of constipation...
Well, they're like a big thing is the common thing for competitors is very common is super dieters tea. That's what they will use, and obviously that it's what category would you put that in? Is that like a pure? I mean, because obviously the ingredients and stuff. Is it herbal? Is it a laxative? Is it dehydrating the same with the mechanism? I mean,
I don't honestly know the ingredients off the top of my head. Do you?
No, not off the top of my head, I don't.
All right.
I mean, it's herbs and stuff like that.
It's herbs and stuff. Well, I mean, when you have things like dandelion and
like more of like a diuretic.
Marshmallow.
But it elicits a bowel movement from almost everybody that I've seen.
Yeah. Really? So, and then the other things that will elicit a bowel movement like that are actual irritants to the GI tract, right? Yeah. Okay. I mean, you've all probably experienced at least one irritant to your bowel tract at one point in time. You ate that one thing that was like the best laxative of your life, right?
It's
and
like
then
senna,
Okay. Right. Yeah. And so some of those things actually stimulate the gallbladder to purge its bile, right? And so they work via that mechanism. And if you do that, right, well, you're going to get all that bile dumping in there, and that is going to promote intestinal motility to get rid of that. But bile is very important, and so that can be costly. It can actually be beneficial. Like people that are overly toxic may actually feel good about that because it kind of gives them a bit of a purge, right? But once you're in that state, you're not going to be able to maintain going to the bathroom properly or having healthy bowel movements via that mechanism. You're actually going to fatigue that gallbladder, which is going to inhibit your digestion even more. Not to mention that can be irritating to the digestive tract altogether, right? You got the ingredients up here? Okay.
It's like a diuretic mix with just fuck your gut shit.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Licorice root. Yeah, so spearmint, marshmallow, papaya leaf.
I'll tell you how often we use it.
Cinnamon bark. Right. It's not terrible. I mean, so you got a few things in here that help facilitate, osmolarity to get, water across into the digestive tract. Like the marshmallow root. You got some enzymes in here and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, obviously it cuts off here. I don't know. But I would say this is better than X-Lax by all means or anything like that. So, I mean, if you got to go, you got to go. I tend to prefer to use magnesium because if you do absorb it, great. If you don't absorb it, great, right? It's pretty much a win-win at that point in time, right? Yeah. Or a win-go, depending on what you want to say, right? I don't know. Anybody else got anything to say about constipation? I'm kind of getting clogged up over here.
Well, it can I mean, especially like in the state that you're in at the end of a competition, you could have, low neurotransmitter levels, which are important for motility of the gut. If you're dehydrated, if you're over consuming protein can really stop people up. What else? Dehydration, obviously, and also if you're overtraining, right? Like your gut is going to be like the last priority.
I would think the electrolyte imbalance is going to be more than because like competitors going into a show, they're drinking a shit ton of water, like a lot of water,
which is one of the best.
Well, that's the same thing. At the same time, it does elicit. You're going to kind of expend more. Obviously, the more you drink, and that's going to shift your electrolyte balance big time because you're flushing. And then you obviously, and this kind of leads into the next topic or the question that I get a lot is like cutting water for a competition. You've heard the extremes of people cutting, either taper or a lot of them will cut it like roughly 24 hours, give or take, before their stage time, which is like, say it's always a contest on Saturday. They step on stage at 10 a.m. Then I've seen cut upwards of 10 a.m. the day before. I think that's extreme. I've tried it. Okay, there's nothing stupid that I have not tried coming up in this industry. Okay, so I've done extremes on the stupidity and doing that stuff, and then the smarter way. Okay, but as far as cutting water, I think I never think it should be 100% cut. Like I've never done that with a competitor. I've done it with myself, but 100% cut, I think you're asking for trouble. Now, I think it should be tapered off the day of the show for most people. To what extent? I mean, that's context, because I have some people, they drank a gallon of water on the day of the show because they looked phenomenal, and I see no use in changing that variable because I don't think it was going to make them look any better. But in the mindset of competitors is, I don't drink water, I'm not going to hold water, right? That's why they don't drink it. And then if, say they're flattening out and they're losing that pop, they want to go straight to eating more carbs, right? Instead of, the last thought is, I need to drink more water. They go together, right? You know, if you're overly dehydrated and you're eating all these carbs and stuff, nothing's going to be pushed into the cell to fill it out, right? What extremes or stuff have you seen, Cass, with the cutting water issue?
Well, what I'll tell you is I have never regretted not cutting water and putting a person on stage. But there are plenty of times where I have regretted cutting water.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So, I mean, just in general, I mean, you know, I think the things that you need to take in context with, like, you know, if tomorrow's not the day you're competing, listen up now. Is that the healthier and the less inflamed you come going into a show, the less cutting water is going to make a difference, and the less, you know, the less of a need there is, because, you know, how do you want to preface this? Like, I mean, are we cutting water and we just taking water out, or are we talking diuretics? Because those are two totally different things, right? I mean, if we're just talking about water restriction, you know, I mean, I don't like that anything more than 24 hours out. And, you know, to be honest, I actually, it always depends. It's always individual on the athlete. But, I mean, what I've done in the past to kind of make things the easiest is I'm not trying to carb load usually as much on stage day. I mean, my typical approach for safety has been to carb load up and, like, get full, and then be conservative on water and fat load, right? I have found that to be an extremely useful tool.
Fat load as in the day
of the show, right? Using the fats to bring out the vascularity without the risk of the water accumulation. And I have found that I love that approach way more than playing with water. Fat's
right? It doesn't pull water into
it doesn't
the
pull
way
water in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you bring fatty acids up in the blood, you know, there's this whole physiological process that forces you to volumize the blood, which brings out the vascularity of the people that want that. Now, say if you're a bikini competitor, that may actually not be the thing that you're going for. I still like using fats, but it will be to a different degree. It won't, like, it'll just be like we're using fats to sustain the day, right? For, like, you know, to sustain the energy and all that stuff. Whereas a guy, I might be like, man, I want you to look like a roadmap, right? So, you know, we're just gonna push that stuff, you know. And so, and in terms of, like, you know, when it comes into electrolyte balance and stuff like that, I always use a balance of electrolytes. I've never been a fan of sodium loading or potassium loading. I took biochemistry, so that's just kind of eliminates doing that stuff to a human being, you know.
That's one thing I did change with time was the last, I'd say 3 years, is I used just a balanced electrolyte product for the clients. I was using the 40,000 volts electrolytes, so you got me on the Centerplex, and I've been using that as well, and it's made a big difference. And not adding, I mean, you may have a little bit more sodium laden foods, a little bit, but it's not loading sodium. It's a big difference between the two.
Yeah. Again, with sodium, like what most people don't understand is with sodium, is that, like, they get the illusion that it's, like, really helping with their pump, but understand that sodium really, so when we bring sodium concentration up into the blood, it pulls more water into, so you get more blood volume, right? So as long as, like, there's this fine line of bringing more into the blood, but it's not actually within the muscle cells, whereas glucose is going to drive the water in the cell. So there's this fine balance between using electrolytes versus using carbohydrates to drive the water where you need it to be, and understand that sodium is going to result not necessarily as much in a fuller but more vascular, which is why, like, when people eat the junk food, post, they are like most people are veinier the day after the show, regardless of whether they're full or not. But their veins are just right because what do? They have junk food, right? So they don't just have carbs.
No, they have fries and just burger and everything.
Shitload of salt, right? And same thing for the look that you have going on stage. And by no means did anybody ever win a show by somebody counting veins. So I want to make sure I got it
all the time.
Right? They count your veins?
No, that's like I need to be vascular on stage. The judges literally cannot see your veins from where they're sitting at.
Yeah,
it's irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I prefer to use a balanced electrolyte, and that's mainly just for a cellular. I mean, that's for the intracellular hydration. I don't really sodium load, so the balanced electrolyte plus the glucose is going to give you the maximum amount of intracellular water where you want it, and the least amount of just like blood volume water. And then on the day of the show, that's where you can, like, if you want to bring up your vascularity, by all means, use some sodium, use some fats, use some, glycocarn or whatever you want to do for vasodilation or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly like citrulline. I mean, I like a simple citrulline product before they pump up to go on stage. It's not anything sodium ridden by any means.
So I tend to bias towards glycocarn over citrulline because of the water crossing the intestinal barrier.
Okay.
Right. So from a hydration standpoint, I tend to do that so that we don't draw more water into. I mean, it's like because it just tends to be biased. I just find that to be a better look. Also, it helps me eliminate any digestive things going on. Like if you've been off supplements or whatever, I find I love citrulline. Like use it all the time. But if I'm talking specifically contest prep and I got to choose one on show day, I'm going to go with glycocarn over citrulline because it's going to bias to me less water towards the gut, and I'm still going to get that vasodilation effect and fewer digestive things, right? Because the last thing you want is somebody hitting poses and they're not sure if they're gonna right, right? They're not sure if it's gonna be the most explosive pose that they ever.
And I don't get this question, where like brand like glycocarb, people are gonna ask me where to get this stuff. Because I can guarantee you, most people have not even heard of that before.
So I mean, the one that I use mostly is by Life Extension. Is it Glyco ATP, or do you remember the name of the product? Off the top of your head? Yeah. So that's I mean, pretty much. If you look up glycocarn, it's a form of carnitine that promotes vasodilation. So you also have the added carnitine, which is going to help you with fats and dopamine and things like that. So it's another one of those things where it's got multiple benefits. I love something that can give me multiple benefits on show day, right? So if that's going to help with the person's energy and help them utilize the fats that they're utilizing that day, then man, that's just more benefits.
And as far as fat sources, are you more apt for like nut butters? There's like saturated fats in the food, or I know some people do oils. I don't think I would be prone to be doing oil.
Yeah, I don't like oils just because that's too risky. I mean, if you got an empty digestive system, you pour oil in it, that's a mudslide, and you got to squeeze in a lot of things, and it's hard to hold in liquid when you're squeezing in a lot of things, right? So I will usually use some coconut oil because I want the MCTs for a little bit of energy and the saturated fats, and then I will add a nut butter and use high fat meat. So steak with butter, like steak with butter on it. Yeah. But if I want more fat and less protein, I will add nut butter.
Yeah, because I do to eat easier is I do get the grass fed beef and then mix the peanut butter in it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and I will do low carbs and high fat, carbs and fats at the same time, right? If you get fat on the day of the show, well, that's pretty impressive, right? So I have no problem with eating carbs and fats on the day of the show. So
I do like the mixed ones.
Rice cakes with almond butter, and we're talking we got rice cake and almond butter, right? Yeah. Not quite that, right? But I mean, it's not like you just lightly skinned, right? You put the rice cake out in the sun for a few minutes and that's no. I mean, there's a healthy or
the only thing that I find is not a problem, but I have to really watch my comments because some of them, especially if it was a female, they freaking start eating one and then one turns into 10. Yeah. It's okay, you have to control this. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not unlimited amounts of this food that you can eat, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like the whole package of rice cakes with the whole jar of peanut butter. Guys don't get extremes with this type of stuff. I think honestly that's exactly what I did the last time I competed. Was I loaded up, I cut my water, honestly, when I went to bed, that was when I restricted. And then the day of the show, I was drinking around 6 ounces, 8 ounces between meals. I just like to have my water between meals instead of with meals during the show. And then I had beef and peanut butter for my breakfast. I don't remember what the other show was, but it was similar to what he's talking about. But I had some carbs with it too. I had probably half a cup of rice in there as well, right? But it was very small meals too. I don't want a lot of volume of food. And I don't think anybody should need a volume of food because, again, you have to control your abdominals, right? So this shit's going in here. Yeah,
it's one of the reasons I like fats, right?
Yeah.
It's dense, right? You know, and if you're stressed out and you eat carbs, if your digestive system is just like, no, you got to put water in your digestive tract for those carbs, right? So, you know, if you should know what fats are safe for you, like from a digestive perspective, but people are way more likely to bloat on carbs and protein than they are for fats.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's like on that day, from a physique perspective, fat is actually your friend. You've been hating it for however long, and then at the end, there that fat is for you, right? It's just never gave up on you. It's there to save you in the end, right?
And I like to keep a little bit of that in during all the prep, again, so the digestive system is used to that food. It's not like this, they haven't had it for 20 weeks, and all of a sudden you give them nut butters and stuff, and some people can have a reaction to it in a negative manner. So I like to incorporate those foods at some point throughout the prep, so their digestive system stays acclimated to it.
Yeah.
So there's not like, oh shit, what's going? What are you trying to feed me?
If you do the high fat thing, it is more important to have the water away from the meal. For those of you guys that flunked elementary school, water and oil do not mix, right? So again, I mean, our goal is just to make sure that none of you guys poop your pants on stage.
Yeah, that would be.
I mean, we just got done talking about constipation. Our goal is not to take it to the other extreme, right? Yeah. It's not the day to solve that problem on stage, like at least in that moment.
Is there any questions, Cody? Okay.
Yeah. So you know what we didn't talk about with the bowel movements? We talked about the dry, constipation. What we didn't talk about the people that are constipated and don't know they're constipated because they're constipated but they still have diarrhea, right?
Okay.
So it's like you don't go very often, but when you go, you gotta go, right? And that's usually what happens, right? And so that's when you have like an inflamed bowel, right? So, so basically, these people usually don't know they're constipated because they don't have a hard time going. So when they got to go to the bathroom, it's like an emergency. It's like, I got to go. Like, if I don't go, then we're going to have an accident, right? So they're the people with the extra pair of pants in their trunk. So in this case, this is actually worse than the other case, right? Because this means that you have some sort of irritant or inflammation in the bowel, yet you are still undernourished, right? So in these cases, fiber may actually be beneficial, mostly to help kind of like just get some more stuff, but you could also look at things like activated charcoal or, bentonite clay or any things to help help clean and detox the gut, and then all of your things to promote digestive health and decrease inflammation, right? And you can look at this too, also like stress can affect the motility of the gut both. You can either make it stop or go. Like you can get constipated or you can get diarrhea. And it can also be one of the things that leads to this situation because you can have a confliction between what your body needs from a nutritional perspective and what your body says it wants to do from a stress perspective, right? So, I mean, if any of you guys have ever watched Discovery Channel, like you probably seen an episode or something where, you got a, a prey animal and all of a sudden a predator comes out and the first thing it does is and then it takes off, right? It's not jet propulsion, that is a stress response, right? So if you have an issue where you're very unhealthy, your body's trying to restrict and get a lot of nutrients out of something, but your system is very stressed out and it senses this sources of inflammation, it's like, oh, we can't afford to spend any more energy digesting. We're just too stressed out to do that. You have this conflicting thing going in your digestive tract. It's like, stay, go. And when you get to the end, this just, it's like the Sparta. Like, once you get to that point, it's like there is no stay. It's just go, right? So it's like it's like Monopoly. You do not pass. Go, right? Once you pass that, there you go, right? So we have to reduce inflammation in that case, right? So you're really going to have to take time. And one of the actual best things for that is to back off the inflammatory based training.
Yes.
You know, that's going to be huge, because no amount of, you know, fish oils or whatever you want to use or glutamine is going to make up for the fact that you're creating a massive source of inflammation. And you want to like get rid of a lot of stuff that could be deleterious to the gut from a supplement perspective, which probably means you're going to have to work out without pre-workout. And here's a sign that you shouldn't be trained to failure. If you can't work out without pre-workout, you have no business worrying about doing extra sets to failure, right? You can't, without like supplementation, tolerate the training you do, right? Performance enhancers should be performance enhancers, right? Not workout survivors, right? So if you take away some, like if you can't train without your citrulline, like, or your BCAAs or your EAAs, whichever one of those paradigms that you happen to have, you know, married yourself to, you know, or any supplement in general, in my mind, right? Like, I mean, all of these things are meant to help us, but if you are dependent on them, that's a sign that like things got to come down, right? And usually in this case, what you usually end up having is a lot of people that are surviving on stimulants and things like that.
Caffeine is like to be all in now.
Right? And so one of the most important things, in addition to cutting down training, is also getting rid of that. And sometimes if you get rid of that, you'll be surprised. Maybe you can actually maintain a decent training volume because it was a lot of that, you know, it was a lot of that stuff, right? And sometimes it isn't the actual active ingredients, it's the inactive ingredients, right? It's the dyes and the chemicals and the sucralose and all of the things that aren't bad for you, like in the context of like a short window of time, but you know, over the course of time, right? Like, I mean, you just had a whole thing,
yes,
with, you know,
with my
with your gut, right? Or we, you know, we worked out some, you know, some supplement issues and some bug issues or whatnot, and right? Big difference, right?
Go back from eating 200 grams of carbs back to 500.
Yeah.
Literally in a week.
Yeah.
Switched over.
So, and the thing is, even when you were eating 500 grams before, you probably weren't actually getting those 500 grams into your tissues, right? You were fermenting. You were fermenting a good.
My wife was getting a whiff of the 500 grams of protein.
Right? Yeah, right.
Yeah. Digestion, right?
Yeah, right. So, it doesn't go out this end and then reabsorb the skin. It's not.
You
how
know,
it
though,
works.
but for Alan, for like your clients and people who don't like into holistic nutrition, something like when you say like biomarkers and things like that, people with excessive gas, like in prep or something like that, even in the off season, right, putting on weight, like, well, that's just a normal thing. Like,
yeah, because they just think it's the volume of food that's causing it.
Like no, that's not normal. It's
just
not
ask any of your friends or family.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is not normal. There's a reason we stopped asking you to Thanksgiving, right? Yeah, it's just like, yeah, exactly. So,
that is like the most common issues I get with bodybuilders now, is that their guts are a mess because they think that that's a normal thing that they should be experiencing because the volume of food gets so high. You know, when you get to 5,000, 6,000 calories.
in powerlifting, we call it the bloat, and it's a goal. It's a goal. Did you get the bloat? You know, for a meet, like, how is that supposed to help? Like, it doesn't propel. It's not that much. It propels me up in the squat. I promise you. Yeah, no, that's a goal.
It's not to say you'll never have gas or anything like that. Okay, that's a normal bodily function. But if it just reeks every time you have gas, that's obviously a red flag. Okay, something's probably fermenting. Something is off. So you need to take this step back. It's okay to pull back your carbs or whatever you need to do to address the issue, because guess what? You keep pushing and pounding food is making it worse. You're not actually utilizing all those nutrients you're breaking down to go towards muscle growth, recovery, et cetera, so get out of your own way. It's much harder to build tissue than it is to lose it. Okay, once you've built a house, it doesn't require as much to maintain it. Okay, so understand when you come across these issues, it's okay to take those steps back, fix the issue, then start taking the steps forward. If not, you're going to dig yourself in such a deep hole. Then you're going to take months upon months having to fix these things. Okay, so you gotta get out of your own way for the most part. All right, so like the last question here that came to my mind was that I get a lot is with the whole loading peak week, right, procedure and whatnot. I will tell you this, that I have people that I've had, and absolutely from a lot of bikini competitors especially, there's not really anything. Peak week is just another week, okay? We may make a little bit of manipulations, but there's no massive carb loading or any of this, just because the look is different, right, that you're going for. If you're trying to peak them like you're a bodybuilder or something like that, there's a red flag right there, okay? It's not the same thing. But people ask about front loading and or back loading with their carbs. Front loading being obviously earlier in the week. It could be early as like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they start tapering it off, right, to hold the load. And then the other ones will literally wait until the day before the competition, sometimes starting even Thursday night, and they'll load right up to the competition. Do you see pro cons with either one of those, like one over the other, Cass?
Well, so I mean, the method of me in terms of how much I load, when I load, really depends on what I choose is for that like final training stimulus that I go into, right? So we use certain stimulus that are very powerful at nutrient partitioning, right? They're basically opening the floodgates up for glucose within the muscle tissue, right? And so if you're going to take a few days off, before the show, obviously, right? So you're pushing that stuff, at the beginning of the week, end of the previous week. You would be a fool not to try and get most of your carbohydrates in then, right? So if that's the strategy I have in going in, which, is more often than not, then I'm definitely going to do that. If it's a person where maybe I've toned them down to where they're doing more like strength-based work and some steady state cardio as they're getting into the show, maybe a little, let's like neurotype training with some steady state, just to like, maintain everything. That's the person I'm probably going to backload because I don't have that strong stimulus, right, to load them at the front of the week. So I'm going to do things with nutrition and supplementation to try and peak them at the end.
I had to do that
right?
very method because of where I was pushing metabolic stress and all that stuff when I did my last contest and I was overly stressed. I had to go into neurological type training in the last week. So I just literally loaded the Friday before the show. It wasn't anything excessive. I think it was like 500 grams of carbs. But I was...
Were you still pushing fats at that time? In that day?
No. Pushing, no.
Just like when if
I the last meal before I went to bed, I added fats to it. Like I had the beef, the peanut butter, and then I had
so
rice.
later in the day, you might start to increase the fats a little bit.
I did the meal before I went to bed. But it was carbs up until that point.
Usually the day of the show.
And then the day of the show,
when you have to back.
and the day of the show, I was carbs to maintain what I had loaded. Just to look at stuff that I wanted on stage. Because I came out of a neurological phase, I wasn't doing anything metabolic. I did all that stupid shit for too long, going into it, and I had to reverse out of that. So that was the complete opposite, low inflammatory and all that stuff that we're looking for. So I had to. That's why I backloaded. Front loading. So like typically people will take off. Nowadays, honestly, I'm seeing people. The last training day is like on a Thursday. And they take Friday off, and then they compete on Saturday. I typically would have Wednesday as their last training day, and then they're off for the most part Thursday and Friday. I've done both. I've honestly had people to where if they have to make weight, that's an issue, obviously, with where and how you're going to load. Cause,
that's the most complicated thing. Right? And by all means, I think that's my least favorite part.
Yes.
Favorite part. So we've been talking
too
about
much poop
too long, right?
Yeah.
About the physique sport is when you have an athlete trying to make weight because it takes away from you getting that best physique, and it's really about the compromise of making like what can we come in with and make weight, right? That's a whole new can of worms, right? When you have a weight to make, because then you're a slave to that. Like these are all about optimizing, right? And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So like with me, like the approach is obviously use a training stimulus with the glucose uptake, improves the nutrient partitioning and all that stuff. Putting a majority of their carbs, a bigger load of carbs in at those periods because they're going to be uptaken. And those type of stimulus that you're doing, especially last week, you're not pushing anything to failure. Even though it's a metabolic, you're still not pushing to failure by any means. You're just going for the nutrient partitioning. And then I would do the highest day on a Wednesday. And then I would taper off, but not cut out carbs, going in there. Because I see people, they'll load, and they literally, like the Friday before the show, is just either protein and veggies or just protein and fats to dry out, quote unquote. The whole I need to dry out, the dry out look.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, if you're the best way to dry out is to keep eating carbs.
Yeah, because you're pulling the water in with the carbs, right? So it's pulling all the stuff out.
Okay, yeah.
But people have always, it's like two separate things to them.
Yeah.
I got to fill out, and then I got to dry out.
If your carbs are bringing in water, it's not because they're carbs, it's just because it's too much. Just stop eating so much, right?
Yeah. So like, so I like you're loading, and then you obviously no water. You've slept all night. Friday, you get up for Saturday. You should be dry as shit. Right there, you should be ready to go, and then it's just the fat stuff that we talked about to maintain the look on the stage, and then obviously depending on the rest of the show, maintaining your look all the way through the finals. Hopefully you're in the overall or whatever it may be, because I mean obviously after prejudging the show's done unless you are in the overall. But I would say I err more on the side unless if it's making weight. I always backload. Obviously there really isn't much. You just don't have any wiggle room really, right? You have to make the weight. But I honestly tell competitors that unless you're at the national level, unless you're in that top 5 and you're pushing for that win to get your pro card or whatever, to just don't worry about the scale, weigh in what you weigh in, and you're good to go, right? Now, if you're like me and you're in classic physique, it's high-end weight, you have no choice. Like that classic physique is the most limiting, to be honest, because it's a high-end weight restriction. Bodybuilding, you have multiple weight classes. Figuring all those, it's completely different too. So, I love classic physique, but that they brought out the very limiting type for it to fit people, because so many people are having to drop such massive amount of weight to make the weight, and then they have to compete the next day. I see that at the amateur level like crazy right now, and it sucks. So if you're going to do classic physique, understand that that's an unfortunate part unless you're a genetic outlier and you have no issues with that whatsoever. But as a bodybuilder, I stopped doing that probably 8 years ago. I stopped worrying about making a weight. And in my last 3 years as a bodybuilder, I competed at the very bottom of the weight class as a heavyweight, like 203. People go, why didn't you try to make weight? Because I looked like shit if I did. And I won multiple shows weighing the less. So it's not about the weight, it's what you look like on stage. Bring your best best package that you can to stage. Okay? So with the whole front load, back load, situational, it depends on the situation. It's relative. But I do prefer now, because I've seen it work wonders. And the last person I put on stage last week, we did the exact metabolic stimulus. I loaded them up. We tapered carbs off, but we still had them in. And then the fats and stuff on the show day, you go in and he won his class. Yeah. Right?
I think if I had to put a pattern to it, with people with a lot of muscle mass, I prefer to front load, right? Because usually, yep. And then people with less muscle mass. I mean, I have, you're not going to get an aggressive, like, unhealthy contest prep. Well, you're not going to get me contest prep from me at this stage of my career, right? But when I was working, like, if you wanted to take it to that level, I was, see ya, right? Because I knew I didn't need to do it, right? So, and I wasn't going to have that psychological obstacle the whole way through, right? And it only took me having like 1 or 2 clients that decided to do that, take it to that level besides my guidance and lie to me about it. Then I was like, no, not even gonna risk it. So, I mean, I usually have people come in and, they might be in the best health that they've been, in years in terms of their blood sugar regulation, insulin sensitivity, and all that stuff, coming into a show, which for the most part, there's a lot of things that are unhealthy about contests, but you should be pretty damn good at managing blood sugar when you get there, right? I mean, if you haven't accomplished that with all of your training and nutrition, well then, I don't know what kind of training and nutrition you've been doing, right? Because essentially you better be able to load on air and water. But with people with a lot of muscle mass, right, I like to be able to I like to err on having more time. And, coming with my background in, like, the functional medicine stuff and whatnot, I cheat, right? I use the training stimulus to front load, and then I would cheat and use supplements to back load, right? So, right? Because I knew that, like, all right, if I take advantage of the training and the timing and whatnot, and then there's just a little bit left to do at the end, like, because I have been surprised, right? With, like, I mean, working a lot at the pro level, with just like freaky people, I have been surprised at what I thought would be enough carbs, and then be like, shit, we need more, right? If you backload, it's not an option, right? Now, if you're a smaller person, right? Well, okay, that's not as big of an issue. You don't have as much to fill up, right? But it's like when you have, the person that's basically got the equivalent of the 12 stall garage, you know, you can't exactly fill that thing with bicycles. So you like you need time, and you need to allot some room for error to be like, all right, cool, like we're gonna try 800 grams a day. Oh, lost 2 pounds. Shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know,
I've seen that
right?
before.
You know, you know, it's like, okay, you're looking better. Let's try that. Whoa, looking better. Let's, you know, let's keep going. And then the whole thing is like, oh, you know, here it is Thursday. We just kept going up. Oh, you maintained a little, or you gained a little water. Cool, right? Just back off for a day and problem solved, right? So, I think for people with a lot of muscle mass, you definitely you should try and. We already discussed it's more important that you come in healthy, right, and not inflamed, right? And then it's also more important that when you do that, that you take advantage of that, and I think also with that, I think that really helps with the topic of the water thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because, because with the backload, you have people that, like, you have the traditional, you know, professional bodybuilders that are starting to cut water, like, way out in the week and all this other shit. And then the backload doesn't work because they're too dehydrated coming in, and they panic, like, mid-show, because if you were a little behind and you're like, oh, man, I'm holding too much water, it's like, it's fucking Wednesday, right? So, okay? So it could rain on Friday, and I guess we're all screwed, right? Too much water, right? So, if you have, like, if you're gonna have issues with water management and stuff like that, you're gonna have more of them with the backload. So, like, I mean, if you got your process like refined, that's amazing. For me, I mean, maybe for me, I was working in an industry and, like, at a level where, despite what I know in that field, I wasn't a name.
Yeah.
So I had to constantly battle, well, you know, Phil Heath does this, or Jay Cutler does this, or Hani has his guy do this, or whatever, right? You know, and so it was like, I wanted to make sure that, like, I could clean up their screw-ups, you know, and I always found that was going to be, like, once you put drugs on the table, I wanted to have that room for error. Right, and I think that's a big thing, you know, especially with now with girls, you know, well, let's just put it this way, like, let's not be sexist about this. There are some girls with some freaking amounts of muscle mass and that could eat a ton of carbohydrates. If I had a girl like that, I tend to be other. I mean, if we're just talking about this, like, if I had a 135-pound guy jumping on stage. I mean, no offense, you're a girl in terms of, like, the way I'm looking at this thing, right? And most other things in life too, right? But, you know, unless you're 4'5", then you get my pass. But you know, with the amount of muscle mass, and then if we're looking at PEDs or whatever it is that's coming into play, more room for error, the more I'm going to want to make sure that I have plenty of time, and I give myself a mulligan.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, definitely more tissue is going to make a difference. If you're like a middleweight and down, give or take, backloading is easier for sure, because it doesn't require as much food.
Yeah.
So getting in the 400 grams of carbs or whatever the day before, it's a cakewalk. I've dealt with those people. I was one of those people.
Yeah.
It's not big, but when my guys that are heavyweights and super heavyweights and whatnot, I learned really quickly, like Cass says, like, fuck, I gave them this many carbs. So I thought that would be substantial. I was like, shit, I gotta give them more. I gotta give them more. And if you're backloading, you don't have those extra days to give them more.
Yeah.
It's like, well, damn, it's the morning of. What am I gonna do? Give them a buffet the morning of. And then you have gut issues you can deal with, and the bloating on stage, and a lot of stuff you run into.
That's the other thing, right? Is like, if the more you have to catch up close to the stage, the more you have to worry about water and digestive issues with the carbohydrates, right? You know, if you're a person and you eat 200 carbs and it makes a significant difference in the way you look, then you can probably get away with backloading if you have all your ducks in order and you do things properly, right? But, you know, if if you're like this guy over here, you eat 200 grams of carbs and you fart and it's gone, you better front load, right? You better front load. Right? So, right?
Awesome. Any more questions? Do you have anything to throw at Adam?
No, not really, man.
Yeah, we went on some rants here.
Well, no, but also I just think when cutting water, and it's just coming from the perspective too of, like, in powerlifting. I was just sitting here thinking with competitors, like in bodybuilding on a national level, and I'm going, you know, having even some big competitors or even females, you know, you're like, man, you know, we had a good prep, we lost, like, can look fantastic losing like 20 or 30 pounds, right? And I'm going, wow, in powerlifting we do that in like 6 days. 20 and 30, but when it comes to cutting water, And it literally, and that's why when I have this conversation with Cass, I'm like making weight and powerlifting. That's all it's about, and like how drastic it is to make weight for performance, right? And how it hits, right? Yeah, I'm just sitting here going, in my head, I'm just going, it's the stupidest thing you could ever do.
Performance and cosmetics are way different.
Yeah, and absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, and as a performance, we're even more sensitive to it, and we do it even more extreme. To do 20 pounds in 7 days, 30 for a bigger guy, yeah, we do it. We do it all the time, no problem. And then put more on. And yeah, for performance, it's the most ridiculous thing you ever heard.
I mean, the body does some crazy shit sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not always going to be predictable. Sometimes it just does what it does. But that's what you got. That's why peaking. It's a monitoring process. It's not like here's your plan for the week. Go do it. And you're going to call someone on stage. You still have to account for other variables that you just never know. I've estimated a carb intake for myself or a client, and it just had to go up, right? Or I did have to pull it back down. You know, I went to a competition. I got there the day before weigh-ins, and somehow I gained 20 pounds. That's not. I mean, I literally gained 20 pounds. So I'd lose 20 pounds in a day to make weight. I did it. I would never want to do that again. But then going to fill out, I fucking had to eat like some dense food, like fries and all this stuff, because I dehydrated and I just pulled so much out to make the weight. So there's sometimes just some variables that get thrown at you, and you have to deal with them as best as you can. That's where the experience comes in with the knowledge, because if you've never done this and dealt with a ton of bodies, it's always going to be a learning process. You can have all the science background you want to have, but if you've never ever dealt with multiple body types and different bodies and stuff at all different sizes, it's a whole different ball game, all right? And as a coach, when you're up and coming in this and peaking people, confidence within yourself is going to be a game changer. If you're always second guessing yourself, that's going to lead. You know, I'd tell you to be more conservative than not. If you really don't know, don't take the chance just because somebody said they did it, right? Go on the safe side, be conservative. As you learn people, you learn the bodies and stuff, then you can push for that. You know, nobody's ever going to be 100%. Okay, let's 95%, 99%. That's what I want on stage. 100%. Usually, when people try to go to that extreme, because nothing's perfect in life, they overshoot or undershoot. It's one of the two. Something bad happens when I've seen that happen. So be conservative in your approach. If you don't know what the hell you're doing peak week, don't change anything. Keep eating, keep drinking. You should look 1,000 times better than when you started prep. You should look like you belong on stage. So don't worry about that last 10% to peak. Just go throughout your week. Maybe, increase food a little bit, the week going through the show. Make small little changes. So less variables, less room for error, okay? Because I don't throw away 20 weeks of your sacrifice and stuff to get ready for stage for that, that last 10%. It's not worth it, okay? So hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, we'll put this up on YouTube as well. And if you have any questions and comments, obviously feel free to message or comment under the YouTube when it goes up. All right? We will talk to you guys later.